I was recently introduced to an artist called Joon Ki. He's a South Korean artist who is known as a human printer. This guy, if you've never seen his work, I highly encourage going and searching him. He is beyond amazing whenever it comes to his memory and his ability to draw semi-realistic. And I say semi because there are some instances where he goes more surreal in his imagery, but he draws semi-realistic and highly detailed artwork with just a pen. He does a lot of live performances where he'll go up and just starts creating these very elaborate drawings of people with machinery. Sometimes he will do anthropomorphic fantasy characters, and it's quite astonishing that he's able to create all this work, hyper detailed. The animals, whenever he does them, are incredibly realistic, and he creates all of this with consideration to perspective. So, after seeing all of his work, I decided to do the challenge myself. With this image, and I'm sorry I didn't record from the very beginning, I did not expect it to turn out as well as it actually did. I thought this was going to be a failure. I started recording this image and I went in without any concept, any clue of what I was doing. I had no sketch ideas, which was actually a huge risk. But I went ahead, I took a pen, and it's just a very average pen. It's a Uniball. Any pen will do, to be honest, as long as the ink flows really well. Just any pen you got, pick it up, use it. Doesn't matter what brand it is. So I went ahead, I started drawing, and I did this with consideration to just a few things. I drew subject matter that I knew, which is why you see a skull to start off with. I'm more familiar with anatomy than with anything else. And also, I kind of cheated a little. Anatomy, it's more gracious whenever it comes to mistakes. If you're drawing a human portrait and you get the eyes off, you get the nose off, anything looks out of place, it's more glaring than a skull. I did a bit more fantasy to kind of ease me in. Trying to do something more realistic off the top of my head seemed way too frightening in order for me to go into it confidently. And I do believe that was the biggest thing about this entire drawing. I had to go in with things that I already were familiar with. Skulls, the fabric is very simple. I just kind of BS'd my way through some of the elaboration with some of the detail. After that, I just kind of worked more with fantasy anatomy. So I know some of it's a bit awkward, but this is my first time trying to do a straight ink, no idea what I'm doing, no concepts, no framework, no pencil work, just straight ink. It was both terrifying, but once I started laying things down, it actually became so liberating. The main thing I was focusing on as I was working on this drawing was to be a bit considerate of perspective. I started with the easiest one, just 1 point perspective. And I'm really surprised that I was able, as I was working, to keep that in mind. You'll be surprised with this type of challenge how much of the art basics start to come back up as you're working. I was considerate of perspective, light source. I was trying to keep in mind line width, how much detail I put into objects in the foreground. And later on, whenever I get to the background, you'll notice that I start to be more forgiving of detail. And I will admit there were a few points, like right now I'm drawing it's a Maine wolf. It's a very interesting breed of animal where it's a wolf, where it's really long limbed. They're beautiful creatures. And I went through, I looked it up on the computer, I studied its face for just maybe 5 or so minutes. And then I decided to practice my memory, which my memory is terrible, so I'm surprised I actually managed to pull this off. I studied it for 5 minutes and then I went to my paper without having the image up. My computer's not even with me whenever I'm recording. And I just started drawing from what I could recall. And this is something that Kim Gi, often did. He just has all of these animals and basic structures for animals that he keeps in a Rolodex in his mind. He has a fantastic memory for detail, and I really wanted to practice that. So I went through, and I'm really surprised I was able to retain so much information whenever it comes to the anatomy for that dog. Now, if you kind of notice in the video, little black streaks coming back and forth, that's actually my cat. He's a black cat and he really doesn't know how to leave me alone whenever I'm drawing. So every once in a while, you'll see him kind of float on by. As I go through with the drawing, there are some parts where I pretty much ad lib everything, but some of it were also suggestions that I was given from my sister, like with the hair, add something different, make it not just a skull, make it a little bit stranger, add some hair to it. Right around here, I looked up a few reference ideas for what kind of space I was going to put these characters in. So I did go and I did a bit of research on just balconies, a bit of scenery, and again, going through all of the images that you can find on Google. I decided to just pick a few, memorize them, and I started drawing. My one perspective drawing is not that great. For anyone who would know actual architecture, anyone who has a keen eye can tell, I really kind of messed up on the frame, on the wire or iron work on the balcony. But, I just kind of accepted it. I don't know, maybe someone drunk put it up. Well, let's just leave it at that. But I really just moved on as I made the mistakes. I let them be what they are. I try to mask them a little with thicker lines, maybe a bit of shrubbery in a few areas, some greenery I use to kind of mask the little awkward points, the mistakes. So anytime you're looking at an image, you're like, huh, I wonder why there's a bunch of greenery and flowers there. Oh, it's hiding a mistake. All right, so I keep going and I'm at this point where I just want to fill up all of the space. If you've seen any of my artwork, I am not very considerate with backgrounds. I tend to kind of glaze over them and have just maybe a bit of atmosphere or just a broad kind of color in the backgrounds. So I tried to be more considerate of details. I wanted every single space in this drawing to be filled with something. Now, if you're going to do this challenge, don't try to fill up every single space. Whenever it comes to creating a composition for artwork, you do want there to be a few spaces where someone's eyes can rest. That's something that I was always taught. If you add too much detail, then it becomes really difficult to try and focus in on what the main subjects are in a drawing or painting. So have a few areas where it's a bit of open space, a little bit of breather with all the detail. One of the biggest things that I enjoyed about this drawing and going through without any type of pencil work laid down, I didn't get a bunch of lead on my hand. For anyone out there who understands what I mean, if you've ever sketched something up and you've gone back through with ink pen, you'll lift up your hand and you'll notice right on the fat part of your palm, a little bit on your pinky, there's a nice helping of lead right there from the graphite. So it was absolutely wonderful and such a time saver not to worry about sketching stuff up, second guessing. I just went with what popped in my head. If I wanted to add a glass somewhere, I just added it. Now, I do highly recommend anybody who wants to push their artwork further, do try this challenge. At first, it is terrifying, but the more you do it, the more confident you get. For an artist at any level, confidence really is key.